Think about the last time you picked up your phone just to check one thing. Maybe it was a notification, maybe it was a quick glance at your messages, or maybe you told yourself you would only scroll for 2 minutes. But 2 minutes became 10, 10 became 30, and before you even realized what had happened, an entire hour had quietly slipped through your fingers like sand you could not hold no matter how tightly you try to grip it. You put the phone down, and for a brief moment, you felt something uncomfortable, not satisfaction, not rest, not peace, but a strange hollow emptiness, as if you had just eaten an entire meal and somehow still felt hungry. That feeling is not a coincidence. That feeling is not weakness. That feeling is your brain sending you a signal that something very precise, very calculated, and very powerful has just happened inside of you. And if you do not understand what it will keep happening every single day for the rest of your life without you ever knowing why. This is not about blame. This is not about shame. This is about understanding the invisible mechanism that has quietly taken control of your attention, your energy, and your time. And today, that changes. Today, you are going to understand something that most people will go their entire lives without ever truly grasping. And that understanding alone has the power to transform the way you live, the way you think, and the way you experience every single moment of your day. Inside your brain, there is a chemical called dopamine. Most people have heard of it, but very few people truly understand what it does and why it matters so deeply to the life you are living right now. Dopamine is not, as many believe, simply the chemical of pleasure. It is far more accurate to call it the chemical of anticipation, the chemical of seeking, the chemical of what comes next. Every time something new appears in your environment, a sound, an image, a message, an unexpected piece of information, your brain releases a small but powerful pulse of dopamine. This pulse does not say you have arrived. It says keep going, keep looking, keep searching. It is the engine of curiosity, the fuel of exploration, and for most of human history, it served us extraordinarily well. It pushed our ancestors to hunt further, to explore unknown lands, to solve problems that had never been solved before. Dopamine was the force behind human progress, behind discovery, behind every great achievement the species has ever produced. But something changed. Something shifted in the world around us. And that same ancient system that once drove humanity forward is now being quietly turned against you every single time you unlock your screen. The engineers and designers who built the apps living inside your phone understood something profound about human neuroscience. They studied the same research, they read the same papers, they consulted the same science, and then they used it with extraordinary precision to build systems that speak directly to your dopamine pathways in a language your conscious mind cannot fully defend against. Every infinite scroll, every autoplay video, every notification badge, every like counter, every algorithmically chosen piece of content that appears at exactly the right moment. These are not accidents. These are deliberate architectural decisions made with one single goal in mind, and that goal is not your happiness, your growth, or your well-being. That goal is your attention, sustained for as long as possible, because your attention is the product being sold. Dr. Mindful Shift has spent years studying this intersection between neuroscience and digital design, and the conclusion is both simple and deeply unsettling. The apps on your phone are not designed to satisfy you. They are designed to keep you just satisfied enough that you never put the phone down, but never fully satisfied enough that you feel complete. That gap, that tiny space between almost enough and truly enough, is where the trap lives. That is where hours disappear. That is where focus dissolves. That is where the slow, quiet erosion of your mental clarity begins. And here's the part that makes this so difficult to recognize in real time. Unlike other forms of addiction, the dopamine scroll trap does not announce itself loudly. It does not arrive with obvious warning signs or dramatic consequences in the early stages. It arrives gently, softly, disguised as harmless entertainment and casual connection. It feels like relaxation when it is actually agitation. It feels like social connection when it is actually isolation dressed in digital clothing. It feels like being informed when it is actually overwhelming your nervous system with more stimulation than it was ever built to process at this speed and this volume. The brain adapts to whatever environment it is placed in most consistently. And when that environment is one of constant novelty, constant stimulation, and constant reward signals delivered in rapid, unpredictable bursts, the brain begins to rewire itself to expect that level of input at all times. And when real life, with its natural pauses, its slower rhythms, its quieter rewards, cannot match that level of stimulation, the brain does not find peace. It finds boredom. It finds restlessness. It finds an almost unbearable urge to reach for the phone again just to feel normal. That is not weakness of character. That is neuroscience. That is biology responding to an environment it was never designed to live in. And understanding that truth is the first and most important step toward finding your way out. Now that you understand what is happening inside your brain, here is where the story takes a turn that most people are completely unprepared for. Because the dopamine scroll trap is not just about the time you spend on your phone. It is not simply a matter of screen time statistics or the number of apps installed on your device. The real damage, the damage that quietly accumulates beneath the surface of your awareness, goes far deeper than that, and it touches something so fundamental to who you are and who you are capable of becoming that once you see it clearly, you will never be able to look at your phone the same way again. What is being stolen from you is not just your hours. What is being stolen from you is your ability to think deeply, to sit with difficulty, to tolerate the kind of slow, uncomfortable, unglamorous mental effort that every meaningful achievement in human life has always required. The capacity for deep focus is not just a productivity tool. It is the very foundation of creativity, of wisdom, of emotional resilience, of the kind of rich inner life that makes a human being feel genuinely alive and genuinely purposeful. And that capacity is being quietly dismantled, one scroll at a time, inside the minds of billions of people who have no idea it is happening. Here is the suspense that nobody talks about openly, the part of this conversation that tends to make people deeply uncomfortable when they first encounter it. Research into neuroplasticity, the brain's extraordinary ability to rewire itself based on repeated experience, shows us something both hopeful and deeply sobering at the same time. The brain that scrolls compulsively for months and years does not simply develop a bad habit that can be broken with a few days of willpower. The brain physically changes. The neural pathways associated with patience, with sustained attention, with the ability to delay gratification and remain present in discomfort, these pathways weaken through lack of use, just as a muscle weakens when it is never exercised. At the same time, the pathways associated with novelty seeking, with impulsive checking, with the anxious need for constant stimulation, these pathways strengthen and deepen with every repeated behavior. What this means, in the most honest terms possible, is that the longer this pattern continues, the harder it becomes to break. Not because you are weak, not because you lack discipline or intelligence or desire to change, but because the very instrument you would need to use in order to change, your focused, patient, deliberate mind, is the instrument that has been most significantly weakened by the pattern itself. This is the trap within the trap. This is the layer of the dopamine scroll trap that makes it so much more serious than a simple bad habit, and so much more worthy of your full and urgent attention right now. But here is what Dr. Mindful Shift wants you to hold on to in this moment, because this is the point in the conversation where it would be very easy to feel hopeless, very easy to feel as though the damage is already done and the battle is already lost before it has truly begun. The brain that can be rewired in one direction can be rewired in the other. Neuroplasticity does not only work against you. It works profoundly, powerfully, and consistently for you when you understand how to use it with intention. The same mechanism that built the trap is the mechanism that will dismantle it. Every time you choose to put the phone down and sit with silence, you are strengthening a pathway. Every time you resist the urge to check a notification and redirect your attention back to the task in front of you, you are building something real inside your brain. Every time you allow yourself to feel bored without immediately reaching for stimulation, you are doing something that feels small in the moment, but is in fact revolutionary. You are teaching your nervous system that it can tolerate stillness, that it does not need constant input to feel safe, that the quiet space between thoughts is not a void to be feared, but a place where clarity, creativity, and genuine peace actually live. The middle of any transformation is always the hardest part. And that is exactly where you are standing right now. In the middle. You understand the problem with a clarity you did not have before. You can feel the weight of it, the reality of it pressing against your chest in a way that is slightly uncomfortable and slightly urgent. And that discomfort is not something to run from. That discomfort is information. That discomfort is your deeper self recognizing the distance between the life you are currently living and the life you are genuinely capable of living when your mind is fully your own again. The people who change their relationship with technology are not the people who had the most willpower or the most perfect circumstances. They are the people who reached this exact moment of honest recognition and chose, in spite of the discomfort, to keep going rather than to close the tab, pick up the phone, and scroll the feeling away. The question that is sitting in the air right now, the question that only you can answer, is a simple one, but it is also the most important question you will face today. Are you willing to keep going? Because what comes next, the 3 steps that will begin to rebuild everything the scroll trap has quietly taken from you, requires only one thing from you. And that one thing is the decision to stay present long enough to receive it. You stayed. And that matters more than you might realize right now, because the very act of staying present through a long, deep, uncomfortable conversation without reaching for your phone, without skipping ahead, without looking for the quick summary or the shortcut version, that act itself is evidence that the part of you capable of change is still very much alive and very much in control when you choose to give it the space to lead. Now it is time to talk about the path forward, because understanding a problem without receiving a clear direction out of it is simply another form of frustration. And frustration without direction has a way of sending people straight back to the very behaviors they were trying to escape. So here are the 3 steps that Dr. Mindful Shift teaches to every person who comes seeking a way back to their own mind, their own focus, and their own sense of genuine mental freedom. These steps are not complicated. They are not expensive. They do not require you to throw your phone into a river or disappear from the modern world entirely. What they require is consistency, honesty, and the willingness to treat your attention with the same seriousness and respect that you would give to any other precious and irreplaceable resource in your life. Because that is exactly what it is. The first step is awareness with intention. Not the passive, vague awareness of knowing you scroll too much, but the sharp, specific, documented awareness of exactly when, where, and why you reach for your phone. For 7 days, every single time you pick up your phone outside of a deliberate and purposeful reason, pause for just 3 seconds before you unlock the screen and ask yourself one honest question. What am I actually feeling right now? Are you bored? Are you anxious? Are you avoiding something difficult? Are you lonely? Are you tired and looking for stimulation to replace the rest your body is actually asking for? You do not need to judge the answer. You do not need to change the behavior immediately. You simply need to see it clearly, because clarity is the first fracture in any unconscious pattern, and once you begin to see the emotional triggers that send you reaching for the scroll, you have already begun to loosen the grip the trap has on your daily life. Awareness practiced with this level of honesty and intention is not a small thing. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built, and without it, every other strategy eventually collapses back into the same old cycle. The second step is what Dr. Mindful Shift calls the friction principle. The human brain is wired to follow the path of least resistance, and right now, the path of least resistance in your life leads directly to your phone. Your job in this step is to deliberately increase the friction between you and mindless scrolling, while simultaneously decreasing the friction between you and the activities that genuinely restore and strengthen your mind. Move the most addictive apps off your home screen and into a folder buried several taps deep. Turn off every non-essential notification so that your phone stops summoning your attention on its own terms and you begin to visit it on yours. Charge your phone outside your bedroom so that the first and last moments of your day belong to your own thoughts rather than to an algorithm. Place a book, a journal, or any analog tool of reflection in the physical spaces where you most commonly reach for your phone, next to your bed, on your kitchen counter, beside your sofa. These are not dramatic lifestyle overhauls. These are small, structural changes to your environment that work with your neuroscience rather than against it. And over time, they compound into a fundamentally different relationship between you and your device. One where you are the one in control rather than the one being controlled. The third step is the most powerful and the most personal, and it is this: Replace the void with something real. The dopamine scroll trap does not only survive because of clever app design, it survives because for many people, the phone has become the primary answer to a much deeper question that the soul keeps asking quietly beneath the noise of daily life. The question of meaning, of connection, of purpose, of feeling genuinely alive in a world that often moves too fast to allow for any of those things to be felt fully. Every time you put the phone down and do not replace that space with something nourishing, a real conversation, a creative act, physical movement, time in nature, quiet reflection, genuine rest, the emptiness that remains will always pull you back toward the easiest available source of stimulation. So the final and most transformative step is to begin, slowly and deliberately, rebuilding a life that is interesting and meaningful enough that the phone genuinely cannot compete with it. Start small. One real conversation a day. One creative act a week. 10 minutes of silence every morning before the world rushes in. These are the seeds of a mind reclaimed, a life reclaimed, and a version of yourself that thinks more clearly, feels more deeply, and moves through the world with a level of presence and intentionality that most people around you will notice long before you fully recognize it in yourself. The way out of the dopamine scroll trap is not a single dramatic moment of decision. It is 1,000 small, quiet, courageous choices made one after another in the direction of your own freedom. And you have already made the first one today by choosing to understand rather than to scroll. That is not nothing. That is everything. If you are benefiting from our topics, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell notification so you can see our new videos early.